Hi, and welcome to the WB Mason Coach Report, joined today by Hofstra baseball coach John Russo. Coach, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Len.
Busy week since we last did a show. Let's just jump right into it. Starting last Tuesday, road game at Fordham, 7-6 loss, but team was down big, rallied back to tie it up at 6, and then fell in the later innings. Just go back to that day and just what was your thoughts on the team's resiliency and fight?
You have to give Fordham credit. They had played a game right before ours and jumped out to an early 6-0 lead and really swung the bats really well early on and got good pitching. They had a no-hitter through 5 innings, and by the time it felt like we woke up some, offensively we were able to score 6 runs and tie it. We were able to have a chance to actually take the lead and weren't able to do it. Fordham was able to push across 1 run on an error. But the one thing I thought I really liked from the day was, the bullpen, really came in and established themselves. A bunch of guys threw and had a bunch of strikeouts, and we lowered the walk some, and so overall a decent day of growing.
Okay, that led to a conference series on the road at Delaware. Again, weather came into play, forced a cancellation on Friday. You end up with a doubleheader on Saturday, lose the first game, come back in the second game, and again fall behind, but rally to take that second game. It's been a theme, but the team doesn't quit and has a lot of fight in it. So, what did you see in the doubleheader? What did you like? What didn't you like?
You gotta give Delaware credit. They have 2 really good starters. Throw on Saturday. They came out hot. They have a veteran type club. Just came out fired up for that first game, and I thought we had a few chances during the game, even though the score didn't look like it, to make it a really good game, and weren't able to push across the big hit. And then, in game 2, they jumped out to another lead, and I thought Bonk was, out there fighting pretty well, and able to get it to 5-4. I believe in the 6th inning, and then Stephen Foster hit a 2-out, 2-strike grand slam that made it 8-5, and then Ferguson pushed across another 2-run homer to extend the lead some, and then Bowie Matheson came in from the bullpen and closed it down. So, we were inches away from being down 2-0 on the road, and then next thing you know, we're 1-1 going into Sunday.
You just mentioned Eric Ferguson. In that game, he went 5 for 5, hit for the cycle. He became the first Hofstra player in almost 10 years to hit for the cycle. He's been a guy who's been on fire and well over 300 his last, probably 6, 7, 8 games. What do you see the difference in him from the start of the season at UCLA and Hawaii versus to when he came back east?
I don't think he was hitting the ball as bad at UCLA and Hawaii as it probably added up. And the thing it was taking more of was his confidence, I believe. And he had a couple game stretch where he was on and off in the lineup, and I think he was bound and determined to not be able to be taken out of the lineup. And he's been playing at a different speed, I would think, for the last 2 weeks. Not only hitting the ball, but just beating out doubles that are normal singles, and just playing at a really fast pace right now. And in that game, he got the cycle. He's a few feet away from having 3 home runs. The single was the last thing he got, but he had a double and triple off the walls, and so he was a few feet from going 3 home runs in that game. So he's been swinging great. He's a good senior. He's a good kid, a good leader. He's been doing really well.
All right, turn to Sunday. Looking to take that series at Delaware and came up, with another lopsided score. What went wrong on Sunday, right from the get-go?
I got to give them credit. They had a freshman that, had their best ERA going into the series, but we probably didn't expect as much as we expected out of the first 2 guys, and he was probably the best of the 3. And so I think we came into it a little bit overconfident, I guess, especially coming off of swinging the bats really well in game 2. And you got to give Delaware credit. I thought Adam Heidenfelder pitched really well, and he gave up a big bases-loaded single, but the kid made a good swing on a good pitch, and just a couple of things worked badly out of the bullpen. But I think in turn we're still figuring out who to throw and what to throw and when to throw. I don't have all the answers just yet on who the conference guys on the weekend are yet.
Okay. After that, that loss against Delaware, you come home, the real home opener, so to speak, after opening up at Mitchell for those first 4 games. You got Manhattan here this past Tuesday. A great pitching performance. from
Brian McDonald.
From Brian McDonald, our starter, thank you. And really an opportunistic game. Team only had 4 hits, but still ended up with a 4-2 win. It was the first win for a Hofstra team getting 4 hits or less in 10 years. Again, the team battle, they came up, in breaks. What did you see? How did you think, you helped, obviously you got to create those breaks, but.
Well, something we had talked about on Monday when I came back in the office and we were talking about the weekend, we just hadn't really caught many breaks. Teams were fielding 985 against us, and, I think we were due a little bit of breaks, and Manhattan ended up making 4 errors, and like you said, our whole offense is predicated about putting pressure on the defense, so it was able to make some errors happen. But I think everything got established in that game by Brian McDonald. He came out right in the first inning after a couple of rough starts that starters had at Delaware, and established himself. And had a couple of zeros. We were having trouble on the weekend putting up zeros. He put up zeros in 5 of the 6 innings he pitched, and I think that the team finally fed off the pitching staff instead of a little bit the opposite, getting their energy off the offense. And it was good to see. We got great relief from Mulligan, Matt Weisheiser, and Chris Weiss closing out the game, and they threw shutout relief, and super happy with the game overall. I thought Manhattan was a good team and played really well. They had a no-hitter through 6 innings, and got a lucky break with Donovan's knock in the 7th to win the game.
Okay, that pitching, you said feeding off the pitching, that carried over to yesterday at St. John's. A perennial power here in the Northeast, a Big East team playing at their place. Alec Eisenberg goes out and gives you, 5 good innings, 3 hits, 2 runs. Walked a few guys, but was able to battle out of jams. And then you went to Nick Kozlowski for the final 4, and he gave you another, 4 solid innings, gave up some hits, but worked himself out of trouble. And St. John, ended up with a 6-3 win. Just how you feel yourself that the team is now building some momentum as you go into another non-conference weekend this weekend?
I think it's exactly what we needed. I think we needed the pitching to get righted, their ship to go in the right direction. And I feel like the last 2 games it has, and hopefully, this weekend the guys can keep building off of it. I was super proud of Alec yesterday's game. Not only did he pitch great and battle out of jams, but the 40 degrees, raining, couldn't have been much more miserable, type of weather to play in, and he never relented. And I think that's a big growing from him. He had an outing earlier where it was really windy and cold, and maybe wasn't as mentally tough as he probably could have been, and he learned from that, and I got to give him all the credit in the world. He really battled, and then Kaz came in his first relief outing of the year, and was able to get out of a bases loaded jam in the 6th inning with a strikeout of their 4-hole hitter looking, and then finished out the last 3 innings. And I think if I wouldn't have let him finish the game, he would have probably beat me up, because he was real intent in establishing himself in the game. And he had a rough outing on Saturday, and I think it was a great way for him to answer back and throw that way.
The offense really got a lot of production from your 7, 8, 9 hitters: Brad Witkowski, Chris Weiss, Chris Hardart. With Brad Witkowski especially, really, started again, another guy who started off the season a little bit slow, but he's really picked it up the last, handful of games as well. And obviously, CA All-Rookie selection last year, he's a key cog for this offense to get going. And how have you seen a change in Brad in the last few games?
Well, Brad is a big fixture of our team, and a guy we have a lot of confidence, and I have a lot of confidence in for sure. And it was nice to see him come up in those spots, and he came up first and second, no outs, and delivered a single to left field where probably most people thought he'd be bunting. But I have a lot of confidence in him, and to be able to bat him 7th is a big luxury right now, because I feel like we have some guys really swinging the bat, and most every lineup we write right now is a good offensive lineup. I feel like I'm almost sitting 2 to 3 guys every game that could have a really good argument for being in the starting 9, and it's not because somebody else isn't producing, but it's because they're all producing, really well across the board. So I'm super happy where, the offense is right now. I love the direction that the pitching staff is now headed in. And super excited that this is a non-conference weekend where we can, work on some things still. There may be stuff you wouldn't do in conference because you're not sure, but now I can get out there and see the team a little bit more.
You mentioned this weekend non-conference, a 3-game series at Villanova. Team that Hofstra hasn't played much. It's been 12 years since the last time Hofstra and the Wildcats have faced off. What, obviously another Big East team, probably, good pitching, solid offense. What are your challenges facing the Wildcats this weekend?
Well, I assume it'll be like a CAA conference weekend opponent, like I'm sure Villanova would do fine in the CAA or be a CAA opponent, but, the fact that it doesn't count towards the CAA is going to give me a chance to worry a little bit about us, a little bit more than the opponent. A lot of times I'm thinking about Charleston or Wilmington and real worried about them, but nothing against Villanova. I'm sure they'll be, but I'm thinking they'll probably do the same thing, still trying to get stuff ready before they start conference next week. And, something I'm going to do with this weekend is Bonk will start game 1, and Bowie Matheson will move from relief to starter, and then Adam Heinfelder will still start game 3. And, I wanted to give Bowie a chance to start a game. Every situation he's come into has been really tough, and get him a chance to start his own game, but then also force myself to throw some relievers into different spots that they haven't been in this year to see if they can close stuff down or see if we can get a couple more guys to count on for the weekend.
All right. That's this weekend. Hofstra's at Villanova. You can follow the action through live stats on GoHofstra.com. You've been watching the WB Mason Coaches Report with John Russo. Thank you.